Hi there.
Hi, Maureen. How are you?
I am good. This is Bobby, right?
Yeah, Bobby K. We're live at Project Freedom Radio Network right now, and so you have a new release, I guess, a new book out.
I do, and it's called Be a Genie,
Hmm.
and it's a book on how to manifest anything and to change your life for the better in every way possible.
Well, that I'm sure the listeners would be interested to hear about. Um, Now, you wrote this about 20 years ago, I understand.
Yes, I started the book 20 years ago, and I actually signed a three-book deal with a major publisher about 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And what's interesting is I also put in the matrix for this particular book that I used the Genie system to manifest a three-book deal.
Hmm.
And then the publisher ran out of money. And so after a few years, I got the rights back and published it myself. So I did manifest a three-book deal. Um, but why would I get held up like that? And the answer has to do with the ability for the book to achieve the goal that I intended. And because I got it back, I did a couple more rewrites.
Hmm. Right.
So
What would you say is, let's say, so special about this manifestation book?
it teaches people how to manifest in a way that is unique and different from anything that's out there right now. A lot of people will say they know how to manifest, but they've never learned it this way. And the reason it's different is because I teach people that manifestation isn't just thinking about what you want, it isn't just going into emotional zone, it's actually creating a movie of the mind, a 3D version of the reality after you've achieved that goal. And what that does is it anchors it into the reality. And then I tie it to the dimensions that I know about from my work as a mystic. And I tie it to what I know about quantum physics and sacred geometry, which are the proofs behind the work.
Ah, I see. Okay. Um, how is it different then? I've read The Secret, so how is it different from The Secret?
Well, I think The Secret tells people a lot about what's possible. And what my book does is teach people how to do it. And it tells them all the reasons why they will succeed. The Secret tells you that it's possible, but they don't tell you why you'll succeed. And I'll give you an example. Um, when a woman wants to manifest a beloved, let's say,
Right.
and she makes an example that, she wants to be happily with her new sweetheart, she usually sees herself with the guy that she's met. And what I would do is take her way beyond that point and see her clinking glasses celebrating some anniversary. And it doesn't matter what anniversary it is, but it's celebrating the fact that we're already been together this amount of time and we're so happy. And what that does is it anchors into the reality a version of the future that shows they got it. Then when they feel that, and I'll play with you if you'd like, and I'll show you what I mean.
Sure.
When they feel that, what happens is they have an emotional shift that allows them to own it. It's like an aha that people get when they get an idea. It's the same shift in consciousness.
I see. Okay.
So give
So,
me an example. Yeah.
well, I would suggest it's something like the Gretzky effect, isn't it? Where the goal is already scored before he shoots a puck.
Hmm. That's true. That's very true. But not only that, but if it were my movie, I would also see that it would have won an important game,
Hmm.
you see, and how I was celebrating afterwards
Oh, I
with my
see.
guys or with my friends. Because I talk about the dimensions, and my experience as a mystic has taught me that the dimensions are nested. So what science tells us is, we've got these multiple dimensions, but what I know from my experience in the ethers, that second dimension is nested inside third dimension, and third dimension is nested inside fourth dimension. And so what happens is this layered effect occurs. So 2D is looking backwards in time in a linear effect, because when you look forward, let's say you're at the graduation of a high school,
Right.
you look forward to the future, and you might be looking at college or multiple colleges. You might be looking at the military. You might look at travel. You might look into a trade school. But there's lots of choices. So it's a fanned out set of choices.
Right.
After you finish college, you recognize that you chose one college and you also chose to go to college. Looking backwards in time, it's a straight line. It's not a fanned out choice. It's not a bunch of choices. So what you're doing is you're doing the same thing. You're going to a version of the future where you know you succeeded, but you're also following the line, the linear line, back to when you didn't have it. And you make both of them real. You don't resist what the situation is now where you don't have what you really want. You hold that as one version of the reality. And then you hold the other version of the reality is where you're looking back in time after having arrived. And it's different when you've arrived. You know, for example, I'll play a joke with you that I do in the classroom. Well, I say to people, what's the difference between a person who has money when they pay their bills and a person who lives from week to week and how they pay their bills? Or month to month, you know, check to check.
Right.
What's the biggest difference between those two? Can you want to guess?
Security? I don't know. What?
The person who has plenty of resources pays their bills whenever they want.
Oh,
The person who lives on their money from paycheck to paycheck, they pay their bills as soon as they get their money because they have all these bills they have to pay. So there's always this anxiousness about getting my money and paying my bills. But when you have plenty of resources and you don't have to worry about whether you pay that bill now or later, sometimes you pay it now, sometimes you pay it later. But the difference is energetically, you pay it when you want, not when you have to.
Right.
Another example is in the store. When you're buying something, if you have money set aside, and this is particularly useful for women because women are very attracted to clothes and buying things for themselves to make themselves look pretty. So you're in the store, you see something on sale, it's the right size, it's the right price, it looks good. If you have money set aside in your wallet for just that purpose, just what I call the mad money or the genie money, you can look at that black skirt and say, yeah, that's great, I love it. But I already have 3 black skirts and I don't think I need it. Actually, I can pass. But if you don't have that money and you look at that skirt and you think about what the fact it's a great price, it's the color's just right, shape's just right, everything's just right, you feel like I can't have it. And it creates a different energy system for you that says, I'm full of lack.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the genie system basically changes the energy of the outcome because it makes the outcome real in the moment. And one of the things I learned is that you can hold 2 versions of the reality at the same time without conflict if you recognize that's what you're doing, just like when you and I would look at a TV with picture in picture.
Right.
So
That's really something, isn't it?
yeah,
Wow. What's the Phoenix sequence?
the Phoenix sequence is the name I gave to the concept that you can take any 2 numbers and add them together in a logarithmic spiral. Now, let me explain. Lots of people have heard of the Fibonacci sequence where it's 1, 1, 2, 3, 5. Right. And the modern, there's lots of things on YouTube and other kinds of publications where you can see videos on people teaching about sacred geometry, and almost always the Fibonacci sequence is taught, and it's basically built upon the idea that you start with 1, you look backwards behind it, there's nothing, so the next number is 1. Then you look backwards behind it, it's 1, and you add that to the second one, and that becomes a 2. Then the following digit is a 3. The following digit after that is a 5, because 3 plus 2 is 5. Now, most people can track with that and see what that is. And when you go higher up in the sequence, every adjacent pair produces another sacred geometry effect that is widely known as the golden mean. And the golden mean is found in the Great Pyramid, it's found in the way plants grow, it's found in the distance between Mars and Mercury and the Sun, it's found in the distance between the bones of the body, it's found in our DNA, and I call it source code.
Right. Now, is that not 1 to 1.618?
It is. Very good. Very good.
Right.
So I'm very happy that you understand that. So 1.168 ... always implies that there's a remainder. And the reason it implies there's a remainder is because the golden mean, or phi, P-H-I, is never ending. So no matter how you create it, it's always reliant upon the fact that there's a fraction, a division, that produces this 1.618, and then the remainder. Now, what is not widely known is that you could take any 2 numbers, and produce phi the same way on the 9th and 10th iteration. So you could start with 5 and 1,000,000 and add those in the same way. So the first number is 5, the second number is 1,000,000. Those are your two starting points. Those are your two versions of the reality. 5 is where you're at today. 1,000,000 is where your heart's desire is after you've achieved it, okay? And those two added together in a sequence, so 5 and 1,000,000 are the first two numbers are 5 and 1,000,000. The third number is 1,000,005, obviously, and the fourth number would be 2,010,000. Okay, so you kind of follow that along. On the 9th and 10th iteration, it will produce phi also. So you don't have to be in the Fibonacci sequence, and by definition, the Phoenix sequence is the master set, and Fibonacci is a subset of the Phoenix sequence. Now, so now why is that useful? All right, let me give you an example. When a woman was in a class in Atlanta many years ago, she was working as a clerk in a law office, and her heart's desire was to be a owner of a horse rescue farm. So we did the work and put her in that situation where she was working with the horses and that she was looking after horses that needed extra care. So you're like looking at a threesome, this is where I'm at today, this is my heart's desire, and what's the scene after that? And you make a movie of that third scene. Okay? Now, a year later, she sends me an email, and she says to me, that Genie system, it really works. I got hitched. Now, I think that's very funny to begin with because, what a way to put I got married.
Yeah, right.
And then she said, I married a man who owns a horse feed company where he's developing an organic horse feed. I'm helping him run his office and his website and all this other stuff for him. She went from being 1,000,000 miles from her heart's desire to being inches from her heart's desire in less than a year.
Amazing stuff.
It is. It totally is. And the thing that makes this different than any other kind of manifestation is a couple of things. Number one, I insist that people imagine that conversation. So if you'd like to play with me, I'll show you what I mean.
Okay, go ahead.
So you have to give me something that you'd really, really like to accomplish or do or have that's been on your bucket list, so to speak.
On my bucket list. Wow.
Yeah.
Think. You put me on the spot because
I know
I'm 66 years old and I've done just about everything I want to do, and but I don't have a big bucket list because I've had 6 different careers. I just retired from law.
Wow.
I've done the Hollywood thing. I've done the owner of nightclubs, and
all right.
Well, I want to rest.
I don't know. With the following you got, you probably won't rest for a little while.
I know.
But, and even if you did rest, because of all the things you have done, you probably wouldn't be real happy because you like the excitement of working with people and being part of the change.
Yes.
So maybe we could pick something that would be definable, like some of the things that you've helped people work towards, let's say a little more freedom of press, let's say.
Right.
And if that were so, then the work you do would be recognized in a way that would be honored, and see yourself, if this suits you, receiving some kind of an award for the work you've done in the press. And, maybe you need to do a few more things before something like that would happen. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But if you were highly honored, do you know what the award would be, or do you know where you would want to be recognized?
Oh, yeah, I know what the award would be. It'd be an Oscar. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, to tell you the truth, we do have RK Film Productions also here. So, I think one of my goals would be to produce a really good, solid documentary that did something.
Okay. So, and documentaries get awards maybe in the Cannes Film Festival or something like that?
They even do it in the Oscars too. But they do it in the Cannes, they do it in Toronto Film Festival and Sundance Film Festivals, and all over the place they get awards. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're receiving one of those awards. Now, if it doesn't matter to you which one it is, then leave it wide open, because that way the one that's going to be easiest for you to achieve is going to happen the fastest. See yourself with someone. It has to be someone that you would expect to be there. So either your significant other, an offspring, a close client, or relationship person. But you have to give me a first name, even if it's a fictitious name, but you have to know who it is.
Right.
Okay, so just give me a name.
Alice.
Okay, so you and Alice are having a conversation. Are you in person or are you on the phone?
In person.
Okay, and are you like having a meal or are you having coffee?
Nice meal, candlelight, and wine.
Okay, so you and Alice are having this conversation and you just received the announcement that you've won. You haven't accepted the award yet, and you say something to her and tell her, and what does she say back to you?
I got to tell you what I say to her.
Yeah, and you also have to tell me what she says to you. That's what we call it play.
We call
No
it
one's
play,
holding
all
you,
right.
no one's holding you accountable here.
All
This is
right.
a way to hate it.
Well, Alice, I'm very surprised that I won the award, and isn't it fantastic? I was the luckiest guy in the world to get a divorce in 1975 from the other one. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so now we're done with play. Let's go for the real play.
Okay, and yeah, so uh, can you believe it? I guess this is what I'm saying to her.
And what would she say back to you? She's been your close confidant as well as somewhat of an advisor in that she gives you her 2 cents. So what is she likely to say at that moment? You've been told you're getting the award. You're going to be going to go accept it somewhere. What does she
Uh,
say?
Knowing Alice, she would say you deserve it, and
Okay, okay. So she
okay.
says you deserve it, and what do you say back?
Hmm.
Now remember, I'm clairvoyant, so I already know how this conversation is supposed to go because I can see it. So I'll give you a little edge, and I'll say to you, you're going to say thank you, and then she's going to say, what are you going to say?
What do you mean? She's going to say, what am I going to say? Like,
Yeah, when you accept the award.
yeah, accept the award. I guess the usual, you know.
But what's the usual? You've never
Well,
had an award like this. I'm going to
well,
be
no,
Alice.
no, no.
I'll be Alice with you for a moment because she is sassy. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be with her because you don't want to be somebody who just argues with you.
Right.
Who's going
I
to be
guess
sassy but not mean.
what I would be doing is thanking the people involved in the project, of course, and um, thanking a lot of different people, especially family, friends, and co-workers, as I said before, and um, I think that's about it.
Okay, and she's going to say, okay, well, if you want to rehearse it with me, I'm happy to listen. Okay?
All right.
Now, imagine that conversation just for a moment. Stay with it.
Okay.
And when she makes that comment, yeah, well, if you want to practice, I'm here. I'd be happy to, give you some tips when you're in that practicing moment. And you say, okay, great, I'm ready. Now, here's what's going to happen. As you do this over and over in your mind,
Mhm.
you will attract to you the people, the players, the professionals who will make this opportunity come together. It'll be either something you've already done, it could be something that you have yet to look at, it could be something that you haven't figured out how is going to get funded yet, it could be anything, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that opportunities will shift and change and move towards you because you have created this window for yourself, this conduit that says you will have this outcome, and you're real focused on what I'm going to say in the moment when I'm in front of that microphone
Mhm.
is thank you to all these people because it would never have happened without all these players, and
Right.
I'm so grateful to be part of it. Thank you.
Hmm.
And that is all it's going to take. Now, here's what happens. When people start to think about something, especially when they really want to achieve it, and this is very interesting because you have a lot of accomplishments behind you. So you don't have this yearning for it, but you have this sense of, oh yeah, that would be the pièce de résistance. So you say, okay, I'll take it. What happens is you're over here where you don't have that particular award, you don't have that particular recognition, but it would say, yeah, I was able to parlay all these different careers into that. The reason when I'm so successful over here was because I used everything I learned over in these 6 other careers and brought it to the fore here. And I'm so pleased about that. Now, You're still over here where you have nothing. When you're aware of these two versions of the reality at the same time and you let them coexist, they're not fighting with each other, they're simply going to coexist. And the universe will conspire to make it happen. And I'll tell you an example. When I first started out working this system, I wanted to create, we're getting a little echo here. I wanted to create something that was an opportunity for me to prove how well the system worked. And so I used it to win a contest. And it was to name a conference room. And then it was to, the winner would win an all expense paid trip to the Bermuda Southampton Princess. And when the contest was announced, even though I was one of maybe 150 candidates who were allowed to apply for this contest as a meeting planner, I wasn't the winner. And I had submitted a really clever name. I knew it was a good one. I'd already seen myself at the beach with the hotel behind me being named, the function room being named, the name I had given it. So I was kind of surprised that I didn't win. I was like, how can that be? You know, I know that I could see that it happened.
Right.
A year later, I received an invitation from a travel agency that did group business, and they wanted me to go on a inspection trip, which I agreed to. The dates worked out. It was on the house, and it was a trip to Acapulco. So I went to Acapulco. When we got there, I said to one of the people I was with, you know, where are we staying? And they said, oh, we're staying at the Acapulco Princess. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's pretty cool. It's a great, great hotel.
Mm-hmm.
I get to my hotel room, and there's a brochure on the bed. And it shows their new function room, which used the same floor plan that they used in Southampton.
Wow.
And the name that they had given that function room was the name I had submitted.
Amazing.
And that's when I realized that when you don't have judgment about someone else getting it first or about it not working out, that impacts the outcome and it comes to you anyway. So in my case, I had been in the hotel business. I knew that sometimes you have to fudge things to make sure that the right person lands in the hotel. And I figured when I didn't win, it probably meant that they had a meeting planner that they've been trying to get into the hotel and that this would be a great way to get them there. So I didn't think anything of it. Now let's go back to your outcome. Okay. You play that mental movie over and over in your head. Anytime it comes up, anytime you think about it, anytime somebody says, gee, what's next? And you can say, well, you know, one of the things I see myself doing is accepting an award for one of the films we're doing with RK Films. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to put us on the map that way. And I'm looking forward to that. And you let that happen.
Yeah. Well, it certainly is worth a try, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's for sure.
The interesting thing is, we know that what we resist persists. We know that when we think a lot about something that we don't want, we get more of what we don't want. And it's a bit like ordering at a restaurant. You know, if you order something that you don't want, because that's all the waiter hears you talk about, what you don't want, that's what they're going to bring you. So it takes a focused effort to think about what you do want and bring that in. So going back to the idea of the dimensions, remember I said looking back in time, right. That's the 2D. Mm-hmm. 3D is the conversation. That's why it's so important to imagine Alice in the movie of the mind, because now you've brought in 3D, because the mind cannot tell the difference between an imagined story and a real one. So the more real you make it in your imagination, the easier it is for the universe to fill in that void. And then see, it's the shift, because when you see yourself getting the phone call and telling Alice, and when you hear her say, you deserve it, that feels real. It doesn't feel as real as when you say you deserve it, but when she says it, that feels real.
Right. God. This stuff is just absolutely amazing, Maureen. You say that being a mystic helped you figure out the Genie system. Can you tell me more about that? And can anyone do this?
Anyone can do the Genie system, and anyone can become a mystic. So, answer to both questions is yes, but they're separate paths. I pursued a very spiritual path, and I've taught sacred geometry for 20 years. And in the process of teaching sacred geometry, I refined the Genie system. I wrote the Genie system before I ever began teaching sacred geometry, the sacred geometry meditation that I traveled all over doing for years and years and years. But what it did is it helped me hone and begin to understand the richness that the Genie system had, that I fell into almost because I like geometry and math so much, not because I had the understanding of what it could do.
Hmm. Well, you say that you saw these things energetically, uh, and then look to find proof. That's interesting. Can you give us an example of that?
Yes. For example, I knew that the molecular cellular biology of the body held a certain vibration. I also knew that everybody was on autopilot through their cells and their DNA until they made the mental decision to step off of that. I didn't really realize that that was true molecularly till I began reading about twins, where there were twins that were born with certain things, diseases that they came with their DNA. One is out picturing it, and the other one isn't. Identical twins. And you look at that and you say, how can one have the expression of a disease or a misfunction, and the other be completely symptom-free? And it had to be free will. And then I was told in meditation to go out and look for cellular biology and DNA. And that's when I found Bruce Lipton. And that was long before Bruce Lipton was ever published. That was back in 1995. He had put a few papers on the internet, but he'd never written a book. So what I discovered is that I believe that the cell membrane contains what I will call autopilot. And autopilot is the set of instructions that we come in with that we think will work. But then once we're here, in the reality, things are different. Things change, people choose, and so on. And we have to be able to be adaptable and to choose also for ourselves. And that's when the cell membrane can be fooled. For example, cell membrane will allow a Trojan horse, such as, a certain kind of virus, into the body, and then once it's in the body, then it unlocks its own covering, and the body is now in trouble. So the cell membrane can make a mistake. When you're on autopilot, that can happen. When you're using free will, you have a better chance of that. And then the third choice is, if you develop your spiritual connection, then you can do what I call check-in, and you're checking in with your divine self, and know that in this instance, even though it doesn't look safe, you're okay, and vice versa.
Right.
And it's that divine connection that really kind of helped me hone the information, because I would double check it against the guidance that I was getting. And I teach that to people as well. I teach people how to connect with their divine self, and I call it the higher self connection.
Wow. Do you think that being a mystic helped you write the book, or know what to do, or?
Yeah, it's funny. I initially started in manifestation probably from the time I was on my own as a young married woman. And I was watching and keeping score on how I was manifesting. And the very first time I manifested something, I knew I needed an extra $100 for something, and at that time it was a big deal. I thought I'd get an extra $100 from a painting job. We painted apartments for extra income. And the money came in, but not through the painting job. And I remember thinking, wow, I didn't have to know how it was going to come.
Right. Wow.
So being a mystic allowed me then to start to pay attention. Should I choose this path? Is this in my highest and best good? And that's been both I do things that other people wouldn't do because my higher self gives me good guidance. And I also do things that other people would say are dangerous because my higher self has given me guidance to do so. So I've been very strongly directed in both sides.
Right.
One time I was on the MARTA, and I got on the MARTA because my host had said to me, I got tied up at a meeting, please take it across town, and I will pick you up near to where I live. If I come and get you, it'll be 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the MARTA. She said, if you get on this train, then you can go all the way straight through. If you get on this other one, then you have to change in the city.
Right.
And she said, call me when you get on the train. Now, it was in the early days of cell phones, and I didn't have a cell phone. So I just said, okay. I didn't really want to admit to her that I didn't have a cell phone, figuring I would just use the phone on the platforms because I had lived in New York City for many years before that. And in those old days, they actually had phones on every platform, but they didn't in this particular situation. So now the perfect train comes along. I get on it. 2 women get on this same car with me. Then a man gets on, about 6'4", 250 pounds. The 2 women get off, but I don't. I don't get any signal that anything's wrong. So the women leave. Now it's just me and that guy. As soon as the train starts, he comes over and stands in front of me and says, give me some money. And I said, no, I'm not going to give you any money. And he said, just give me some money. And I said, no, I'm not going to give you any money. And then I think, if he had a cell phone, I'd happily give him some money to let me use his cell phone. Okay? So I looked at him and said, do you have a cell phone? And he, you can imagine, I was like totally not there. And he said, do I have a cell phone? And I said, yes, do you have a cell phone? And he said, no, I don't have a cell phone, in the angriest voice he could. And I looked at him and I said, well, then I guess I'm not going to give you any money. Now, I'm sure he's thinking he's dealing with a crazy lady, and I'm just thinking he's like being a pest.
Right.
So then he asks me again, and I point to my suitcases, and then I point to my ears, and I say, I mean no disrespect here, but I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Are you asking me anything different than what you just asked me 2 seconds ago? And again, he repeats himself, and then the train pulls into the next stop, and he gets off. And I remember looking at him as he walked away, and I said, you might try sales. You're pretty persistent. Everybody else would have been like freaking out big time, but there was no danger. This man was a bully, but he would not have harmed me. Yeah. And I didn't have to judge that because in my consciousness, there were no warning bells. Another time when I was driving down an interstate, it was late at night, and a big semi goes past me, and my higher self comes in and tells me, get into the slipstream. Now, that's not nice, and I would never do that on purpose because I know better. So I check in. Are you kidding me? I'm supposed to, yes, now. Okay, fine. Now we're coming up on a exchange where I'm going to change to another freeway, and I'm thinking, well, what's going to happen? And this turns out the semi takes the same, ramp to the new freeway that I'm supposed to take. So I ask again, am I supposed to stay with him? Yes, stay with him. And there's this urgency in this, information. Mm-hmm. So I stay with him. Then he drives to the side of the road, still doing 60 miles an hour. And I ask him, yes, stay with him. So now I'm off on the side of the road. We're both on the berm with another car going 60 miles an hour on the wrong ramp, going the wrong way, comes right past us. And then when we get to the new freeway, I check in again. Do I have to stay with this guy? No, you're done. It's okay.
Wow.
Another time when I was driving in France, the first time coming over this particular segment of highway going south, the freeway ended because they were working on it. I had to drive through the city and I got lost. And I'm not very good with directions. I'm better off, kind of checking in than I am actually being able to follow my way through. Right. And I was so stressed about it, so I kept praying, all right, when I come back through the other way, I need some help here. Same thing happened. Some guy went flying by me. It was getting close to where that exchange was, and I was told, stay with that car. He knows where he's going. And I did. I got right back on the freeway after, 2 miles of driving through the city like a crazy person.
What happens if somebody doesn't have these gifts or don't feel they have the gifts?
If they don't have the gifts, then they need to make a decision on whether they want to learn them, because anybody can learn them. And one of the things that I did, I worked in the corporate world, and I knew that everybody, I was an A-type personality. I knew that everybody like me would not be able to meditate, would not be able to trust it, and they had to have a protocol, a set of like 6 or 7 steps. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, and at the end of this term, you will have what you're looking for. Just like when you show up at a gym and you hire a trainer, he or she says, if you do these 5 things, and show up every week and meet up with me, I guarantee that at the end of the 6 weeks, you're going to have the body you want and you will have lost at least 5 pounds, blah, blah, blah. Right. So what I did is I developed a system, a protocol that is really simple, really clear, and it will take people through the steps so easily that all they have to do is learn that, which takes maybe 4 or 5 minutes tops to learn. And then you make an agreement with yourself. You're going to do that set of rules for 6 weeks. And it's pretty easy and it's pretty fun. So I taught it to my kids. I taught it to my assistants. I've taught it in lots of classes, but those people are motivated. Not everyone is.
No, that's true. You're a mystic. Now, isn't this book about material gain? Why would a mystic write a book about this?
I'm really glad you asked me that, because the real reason I wrote the book was because I know that people are either needy or greedy. And if you're needy, you need to have your food in your belly before you can seek God. And if you're greedy, you need a little balance here. And so I knew it would be a way to get people to change their behavior. And the number one thing that will help people manifest faster than anything is to put yourself into integrity. And what that means is that your thoughts and your words and your actions line up. And once you make that decision that your words and your thoughts and your actions are going to line up, you'll be able to manifest almost as fast as you can find a Starbucks. It's amazing. And you start to think about it. It's a simple thing. I can give you an example. One time I was at a party. There was a whole lot of people and some big wigs, and they said, oh, you were here, at the beginning of such and such. And I said, yes, I was. And then later I went back to that same person and said, actually, I was in the second group. And she said, Maureen, that was so long ago. You were part of that first wave. And I said, yes, but I was aware that I might have been misleading you and I had to go back and fix it. And that's what I tell people. Everybody can slip into an accidental lie. You don't really mean it to come out that way, but it does, and then you're stuck with it. All you have to do is train yourself. How do I fix it? And how do I fix it is like this. Oh, what I really meant was this. Or you go back to them and you say, when we were talking about such, I know I said this, but what I really meant was this. Nobody will ever find fault with you when you come back and straighten it out, because they get it that you're trying to keep yourself lined up. It also means you don't say thank you or any other P's and Q's unless you're willing to mean it.
Right. Wow.
And what that does is it lines you up with manifesting, because every lie is telling the universe there's not enough.
Mm-hmm. You put a lot of proofs in this book too, and why did you include the proofs in it?
It goes back to those A-type personality. I wanted to reach the people that weren't going to be reached by the secret, or they would know that there was something to it because so many people are following it, but they weren't buying it because it was too loosey-goosey. And so I wanted to give them some solid proofs. One of my favorite proofs has to do with something I was taught in my 20s by my angel guides that had to do with how to deal with negative thoughts. And what they told me was, every time I had a negative thought, the way to deal with it would be to follow it with 2 positive thoughts. And I had just transferred into another college. My parents didn't like my previous college, they didn't like my friends, blah, blah, blah. So they convinced me to transfer, and I did. But I hated the new school. I didn't like anything about it. And I was so miserable, I kept begging for guidance to help me sort through it. And that's what they told me. So go ahead, have your negative thought, and then follow it with 2 positives. Well, pretty soon the director of admissions found me and said, I want you to lead the prospective candidates around. Now, take that into the science side, and you're looking at noise-canceling headphones. Now, noise-canceling headphones have been around over 30 years, maybe even 50 years for all we know, because we've had it in the public eye for maybe 30 years. And when I first heard about noise-canceling headphones, as a mystic, I knew that wasn't possible. You cannot erase a sound once it has been uttered, once it has been made. So how was it possible that there could be noise-canceling headphones? And it turns out that noise-canceling headphones take a obnoxious sound, a lawnmower, a jet engine, and they replicate it. And then they match it up with the sound in reverse. And those two sounds together collapse the wave, producing nothing. But they've only erased a sound that they had a recording of. Do you see?
Right, right.
So why do we do two first? And the answer is the first positive thought erases the negative thought. And the second positive thought becomes the seed that then creates a new balance in your system.
Wow. That stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
Can you help anybody, even me, manifest something that they want?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I have clients that call just for that purpose, that want to bring something in, you know.
Mhm. Right. What's let's say the one most important thing that you'd like to leave the audience with?
I'd like them to know that every day they get a fresh start. Every day when we see the sunrise and the sunset, even if you don't see it, you know it's there.
Mhm.
And each day we get a fresh start. And because we get a fresh start, we can get a new set of energy, of free will, of choice. And the way to claim that is to ask for a day of heaven on earth for me and you and everyone we meet.
That's amazing too. How can a person use this for themselves?
I think the thing to do to use it for yourself is to pick a few little things. Don't try to mix up your manifestations. If you're trying to bring in a beloved, don't put a baby in there. If you're trying to bring in the house, don't bring in the car with it.
Mm-hmm.
Do each one separately, because you might discover that, the car comes before the house or the baby comes before the beloved partner. Sometimes it works that way.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal here is to let each one find its own high water mark and give you the outcome that you really desire.
Right. I know that we've gone through a lot of questions that some pre-done. And just off the cuff now, because we're just going into something a little bit different. We live in a very negative society as far as we at Pre-FRN Radio. We bring in a lot of different people that there are geopolitical situations that happen, and I always believe that the sheeple or the mass population is under a hypnotic trance of control, and they don't always take the time, which they should, but they don't always take the time to sit back and meditate on what they want and what you're talking about, and that's why I'm very, very interested in Be a Genie book, and I'm going to read it from cover to cover for sure. And
Well,
go ahead.
I agree with you, and I happen to think that that's true as well. And the way the genie can help people is twofold. People like you and I can create, a massive sense of people waking up and realizing that they do have choice and that they aren't stuck with whatever. And then the tools are found in that book, Be a Genie, and how they can change their reality, change
Well,
their world.
what we got to do is really push that book, because when I take a look at a lot of the different situations that we come into here at the station, and I look at YouTube a lot because that's just the social network, I guess, and what's going on, and I see that videos or YouTube videos that are of a man or a woman going, no, sorry, a man going up and shaving his wife's eyebrow off while she's sleeping, gets a lot of laughs. And then she has a rebuttal. She goes and shaves his head while he's sleeping. And this is just absolutely hilarious. They got 12 million hits. And then something as important as Fukushima, or what is really happening in this planet, and the GMOs and all the rest of the stuff have got like 12,000 or something. And you take a look at this, the world the way it's going, you think, we need more Be a Genie books out there. And
Well, not only that, but people have to decide what their priorities are. And when you tell me that story about the guy and the eyebrow with her and his head being shaved, don't you kind of wonder if they both didn't plan it?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah. But at the same time, how much of all of this is planned? Because when you look at reality TV and you look at all of the different series that are out, there's very, very few that have any meaning whatsoever to them.
hmm hmm
And that when I say they live in a hypnotic trance, Maureen, I'm just saying that it's very, very hard to break the barrier because I know that, different social functions that I go to, whether it be a film festival or whatever, um, you even bring up anything that's got to do with the conspiracy theory or anything, and you're the biggest nutcase on the planet to the general populace of that group.
Well, but keep in mind that you and I agreeing that it's hard to break the barrier makes it more real than if we didn't say that. Knowing that, we can say that first, and then we can say, but it's going to happen anyway, in spite of what appears to be true. In spite of the lack of evidence, we can see that there's going to be a massive wake-up call. It happened in Egypt. It's happening all over the world. And there's a whole nother undercurrent that's going on underneath all of that of people who aren't asleep. It goes back to the whole idea of the movie The Matrix. Remember the guy who was pulled out of the Matrix and he said, I don't care. I don't care if it's fake. I want my steak and I want to go back in there. Those guys probably will stay part of that system until everything defaults and goes away.
Right, right. Well,
But this
we need that too positive thing too, don't we?
Yeah, we do. And I think it's a good thing to name what we're concerned about, like, breaking that barrier. But I bet you if you knew that going in to one of those, more social kind of things where you might make that case and be labeled a nutcase or, be ignored for the rest of the time there, the way to deal with that is to think about that ahead of time, see yourself having that conversation and having it go viral in a good way. And what a surprise. What a pleasant surprise.
Wow, yeah.
Because you know that it can happen one way. And I'll tell you something else. One of the things I tell people is I don't give out information to John Q. Public. When I left my fundraising job and the new fundraiser that replaced me was sent by the board to come to me and find out how the heck did I bring the donor base up 100-fold and why did it drop by 50% after I left, I never tell people when they ask those kind of questions unless they come back a second time. Because I believe the first time people ask a question, their mind is comparing. So they're looking at getting comparison. They're compartmentalizing. They're sorting.
Right.
The second time they ask, they've opened their heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you wait till they give you a second question.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think this will be a much better world if we have more people like you here, that's for sure.
Thank you.
And that's what it's all about, is being able to spread the word. Even if we wake up one person through a broadcast, it's worth it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think that we're going to reach a lot of people this way.
Oh.
And I think once people learn there's little tools in here that are so easy to learn and so much fun to acquire. And when you start to apply it and you go, wow, that really worked, you can begin to see it. Yeah.
Okay, the website is www.maureenstgermain.com. I advise everybody to go over there and take a look at it. I suppose they can get your book right from your website, can't they?
They can get it from my website. They can get it from Amazon.com. They can get it on Kindle. Any way they want it, we got it.
Oh, great. So Be a Genie is the name of it, Maureen St.Germain. And thank you so much, Maureen, for coming over. It's been a great pleasure and an honor having you here today.
Likewise, Bobby K. So great to get to know you.
Thank you, dear. And anything happens with this, well, maybe 6 months or so, we'll have you back on again, and we'll talk some more for sure.
Excellent.
All right.
I look forward to it.
All right. Thank you very much, Maureen.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.